You're exhausted, not physically, spiritually. You've been carrying things God never asked you to carry, worrying about things He already has in His hands. Try to control outcomes that belong to Him alone. And deep down, you know it. You know there's a difference between saying you trust God and actually trusting Him. Most believers live their entire lives in that gap. Today, we're closing it. Because when you cross from believing about God to trusting Him completely, everything changes. Not someday, not eventually. Everything changes. Here are 6 things that happen when you finally, fully trust God with your life. 1. You experience unexplainable peace. Philippians 4 verse 7 doesn't say God gives you answers. It says He gives you peace that surpasses all understanding. Read that again. Surpasses understanding. That means it doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit your circumstances. It doesn't line up with your bank account, your diagnosis, your broken relationship, or your unanswered prayers. It just arrives, and it guards your heart like a soldier at the gate. This is not the world's peace, the kind that only shows up when everything is fine. This is the peace of a man walking through fire and not smelling like smoke. When you trust God completely, people around you won't understand how you're still standing, how you're still smiling, how you're still praising. You won't be able to explain it either. That's the point. 2. You let go of control. Here's an uncomfortable truth. Your need to control is a confession that you don't fully trust God. That's hard to hear, but it's true. Proverbs 3 verses 5 to 6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight." Notice what it doesn't say. It doesn't say trust God, but keep one hand on the wheel. All your heart. Not most. Not when it's convenient. All. Control is an illusion. You never had it. The believer who trusts God completely stops pretending they do. They stop micromanaging their children's futures. They stop rehearsing every worst-case scenario. They stop trying to force doors open that God has closed. Letting go isn't weakness. It's the most courageous act of faith you will ever perform. The moment you release the wheel, that's the moment God actually drives. 3. Your faith becomes stronger through trials. Nobody wants to hear this, but you need to. God doesn't always remove the trial. Sometimes He uses it to build you. James 1 verses 2 to 4 says to count it all joy when you face trials of various kinds, because the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. Steadfastness. That's not a word for someone who avoided hardship. That's a word forged in fire. Here's what happens when you trust God through the hard season instead of begging Him to end it. You discover He is faithful, not because someone told you, but because you lived it. You find out that His grace really is sufficient, that He really does work all things together for good, that the pit you're standing in is not your final destination. Every trial you trust God through becomes a testimony, and every testimony increases your capacity to trust Him in the next storm. Faith doesn't grow in comfort. It grows in the furnace. Don't waste your trial. Trust God through it. 4. You stop living in fear of the future. Fear and trust cannot occupy the same heart at the same time. One will always push the other out. Isaiah 41 verse 10. God Himself says, "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." That is not a suggestion. That is a promise from the Creator of the universe. But here's the honest question. Are you actually receiving it? Because many believers quote that verse on Sunday and scroll through worst-case scenarios on Monday. They've memorized the promise, but they're living the anxiety. When you trust God completely, something shifts. You stop treating tomorrow like an enemy. You stop planning for every possible catastrophe. You start waking up with expectation instead of dread. Not because life gets easier, but because you know who holds it. The future is not a mystery to God. And if you trust Him with it, it doesn't have to be a terror to you. 5. You become more obedient to God's direction. Trust and obedience are inseparable. You can't claim to trust someone and then ignore everything they say. That's not trust. That's lip service. John 14 verse 15. Jesus said it plainly. If you love me, you will keep my commandments. Love, trust, obedience. They're all connected. When you truly trust God, you stop negotiating with His word. You stop reading scripture looking for loopholes. You stop asking, do I really have to, when God gives you a clear directive. You obey, even when it's inconvenient, even when it costs you, even when no one else is watching. Especially then. Here's what full trust produces: a life that actually moves in the direction God is pointing. Not a life that circles the same mountain of disobedience for years, wondering why the blessings aren't coming. Partial obedience is still disobedience. Half-hearted surrender is still holding back. Trust God enough to obey Him fully. Not when you understand it. Not when it feels right. Now, 6. You see God move in ways you never expected. This is the one that will wreck you in the best possible way. When you trust God completely, He starts doing things you didn't plan, couldn't orchestrate, and wouldn't have even thought to ask for. Ephesians 3 verse 20 says He is able to do far more abundantly than all that we ask or think. Far more abundantly than all that we ask or think. Your imagination has a ceiling. God's provision doesn't. But here's the thing. Most people never see this. Not because God isn't willing, but because they never fully released control long enough for Him to work. They trusted God, but kept a backup plan. They prayed, but never fully expected an answer. They believed, but limited Him to what seemed logical. Full trust removes the ceiling. When you stop telling God how to handle your situation and start genuinely surrendering it to Him, He moves in ways that leave you speechless. Doors open that were welded shut. People arrive at the exact moment you needed them. Provision comes from directions you never saw coming. Not because you figured it out, because you finally got out of the way. So here's the question you have to answer before this video ends. What are you still holding back from God? What area of your life are you managing, controlling, and protecting because some part of you doesn't fully believe He'll handle it right? Your finances? Your future? Your health? Your family? Your reputation? Name it. Because that thing, the thing you just thought of, that is the exact territory God is asking you to surrender today. Proverbs 3 verse 5 doesn't say trust God when it's easy. It says trust Him with all your heart. Not 90%. Not when you understand the plan. All of it. So make the decision right now. Surrender control. Embrace the peace that surpasses understanding. Walk in obedience. Trust Him through the trials. Let go of fear. And get ready, because when you do, God will move in ways you never expected. If this message challenged you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're ready to go deeper in your faith, subscribe. There's more where this came from.